Have you ever wondered why some people seem to bend reality to their will, while others remain prisoners of distraction and doubt? The answer is not talent. It's not luck. It's the silent power of self-discipline, forged not in moments of ease, but in the furnace of conscious mental mastery. And what if I told you that the mind, your mind, is not your master, but your most obedient servant? If only you dare to take the reins. Most people live like leaves blown by the wind, chasing pleasure, avoiding discomfort, reacting to life instead of creating it. But those who rise, those who build the life they envision, have one thing in common. They have conquered the battlefield within. They have learned to command their thoughts with the same precision a sculptor commands the chisel, shaping destiny one decision at a time. The question is, will you? Napoleon Hill once said, "Self-discipline begins with the mastery of your thoughts. If you do not control your thoughts, you cannot control your needs, your desires, your passions." These are not just words. This is a warning. Because every dream you abandon, every opportunity you ignore, every promise you break to yourself is the result of a mind untamed. Imagine, for just a moment, what your life would look like if your actions aligned every single day with your deepest intentions. If you didn't wait for motivation, didn't rely on fleeting emotion, but moved with purpose, even when no one was watching. What doors would open? What power would awaken? What future could you finally claim as your own? This is not a video. It's a mirror, a challenge, a reminder that the most important conversation you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. And in the next few minutes, you'll discover how to speak to your mind in a language it obeys, not with force, but with clarity, consistency, and the unwavering decision to rise. Because once you master your mind, everything else begins to fall into place. The mind is not a passive vessel to be filled, it is a wild force to be directed. And yet, most people allow it to run untrained, like a horse without reins, galloping into fear, distraction, and self-sabotage. But Hill taught us that thought is the starting point of all achievement. If your thoughts are scattered, your results will be too. Mastering your mind begins not with discipline of action, but discipline of attention. Where your attention goes, your life flows. In a world addicted to noise and instant gratification, developing self-discipline feels almost rebellious. It means saying no when everything screams yes. It means holding your focus when the world offers 1,000 shiny exits. But here lies the truth few are willing to accept. Freedom is born from discipline. True liberation comes not from doing what you want when you want, but from doing what you must because you said you would. Hill revealed a secret that modern society keeps burying, that the human mind is like fertile soil. It will return what you plant, whether weeds of doubt or seeds of destiny. If you fail to plant with intention, life will plant for you. And life, when left to chance, rarely grows what you truly desire. The undisciplined mind becomes a garden of regrets. But the disciplined mind, it becomes a cathedral of dreams fulfilled. Discipline is not punishment. It is the purest act of self-respect. When you keep your word to yourself, to rise early, to work in silence, to persist when you're tired, you tell your subconscious, "I am worthy of trust." And slowly, your mind stops resisting. It stops negotiating. It begins to align with the higher version of yourself, the version that is not seduced by the comfort of now, but driven by the promise of later. The first battle is internal. Before you conquer a business, a goal, or a vision, You must conquer the war between your impulses and your intentions. And that battle is fought daily, in the invisible moments, the ones no one claps for. But Hill reminds us, success is never an accident. It is the outcome of self-discipline repeated over and over until it becomes identity. Until you no longer try to be disciplined, you simply are. No one is born with discipline. It is not a gift, it is forged. And its forge is often uncomfortable because it requires you to confront your excuses, your habits, and the lies you've been telling yourself. The mind resists what stretches it. But just as steel is tempered by fire, your will is tempered by resistance. Every time you choose the hard path, to study instead of scroll, to act instead of hesitate, you're not just building discipline, you're building you. Hill spoke often of definiteness of purpose, the unwavering clarity of knowing where you're going. Without it, discipline becomes drudgery. With it, discipline becomes devotion. When you truly know why you're waking up early, saying no to distractions, and pushing through discomfort, the pain transforms. It becomes sacred. It becomes fuel. Because now you're not suffering. You're sculpting something greater than comfort. You're sculpting character. Think of the mind like a compass. If it's broken, you can walk 1,000 miles and end up nowhere. But if it is calibrated, aligned with a purpose, guided by principle, every step becomes progress. Self-discipline is the daily act of recalibration. It's returning to your purpose every morning and saying, "Today, I will move in that direction." You might stumble, you might slow down, but you never stop facing forward. There will be days when the voice inside tempts you to quit. It will whisper, "Just this once," or "You've done enough." That voice is not you. It is your fear dressed as comfort. Hill warned of this internal enemy, this subtle drift that takes you off course without you even noticing. But when you build the habit of discipline, you build a compass strong enough to resist the drift. You stay the course, even when the winds of life try to pull you away. The reward of mastering your mind is not just external. More money, more success, more achievement. The true reward is internal. It's peace. It's integrity. It's walking through life knowing that your actions reflect your values, that you no longer betray yourself for momentary pleasure, that you can trust yourself deeply, fully, without exception. And when that trust is unshakable, so is your future. There's a war happening inside you, a war between two selves, the one you are and the one you're meant to become. One seeks comfort, the other seeks greatness. One says later, the other whispers now. Self-discipline is choosing, moment after moment, which self you will feed. And every choice becomes a brick in the structure of your identity. You are building a future, whether consciously or not. The only question is, will it be built by design or by default? Napoleon Hill taught that thought is the beginning of all achievement. But thought alone is not enough. It must be followed by organized effort. Discipline is the bridge between imagination and reality. It is what transforms dreams into results. And yet most people remain stuck in their dreams, not because they lack vision, but because they lack the daily courage to act on it. You don't need more inspiration. You need a system that you honor, even when motivation fades. Every time you honor a commitment to yourself, you reclaim power, not from the world but from the parts of your mind that once controlled you. The craving, the impulse, the laziness, they begin to fade, not because they disappear, but because you stop bowing to them. Hill called this autosuggestion, the practice of feeding the mind with new beliefs until they replace the old. You discipline your mind through repetition, through belief, through unshakable will. And what most people call sacrifice, you begin to call freedom. Because every time you delay gratification, you free yourself from being a slave to it. Discipline does not restrict your life. It expands it. It gives you time, clarity, momentum. It builds a life where your choices are not reactions, but decisions. Where your days are not accidents, but declarations of who you've chosen to become. That is not just control, that is creation. The mind, once mastered, becomes the most powerful ally you could ever have. It stops sabotaging and starts supporting. It stops doubting and starts deciding. And when you reach this point, when the inner battle quiets and your purpose becomes louder than your fear, you no longer need to force discipline. It becomes who you are. And who you are is no longer negotiable. There will come a day when no one is watching. No applause, no validation, no consequences for skipping what you said you'd do. And it's on that day that you'll meet the real you. The version of yourself that shows up when there's no reward, only integrity. Self-discipline is not about willpower alone. It's about identity. It's about becoming the kind of person who no longer negotiates with weakness because they've trained their mind to obey their vision. Hill emphasized that definiteness of purpose is the cornerstone of all success. Without it, the mind wanders, pulled by distraction, led by fear, ruled by impulse. But when your purpose becomes a living fire inside you, discipline becomes a sacred act. Each action, no matter how small, is a vote for that purpose. Even when it hurts, even when it's boring, even when the world offers you an easier way out. And this is where most people quit, not because the task is impossible, but because their vision wasn't defined deeply enough. They didn't burn the ships, they left room for escape. But you're not here for comfort. You're here to conquer, to rise above the emotional storms that once controlled your focus, and to plant your flag in the territory of self-mastery. Discipline is your sword. Your mind is your battlefield. When you choose to dominate your impulses rather than obey them, your life changes silently but permanently. You start creating results without needing to explain them. People notice something different in your energy. Not louder, just sharper. Not faster, just firmer. That's the weight of a person who has faced themselves and walked through the fire. Discipline leaves a mark, not only on your schedule but on your soul. Because in the end, what you repeatedly do becomes who you are. And who you are becomes your legacy. It's not about hustling harder. It's about becoming so internally aligned with your purpose that discipline becomes second nature. It becomes love in action, vision in motion. And once you taste that power, there is no going back. There's a moment in every person's journey where the excuses begin to sound like lies, not to others, but to themselves. That's when the internal dialogue shifts, from I can't to I won't, from maybe later to if not now, then when. And that shift is everything, because when you begin to speak to yourself with honesty, with urgency, with the tone of someone who has something to lose, you unlock a force that most never discover. Personal responsibility fused with relentless intention. Napoleon Hill taught that our thoughts are seeds, and what we plant, we harvest. But here's what he didn't need to say out loud. Weeds don't wait for permission. They grow on neglect, on delay, on passivity. Discipline is the act of pulling out those weeds every single day. It's the invisible gardening of the mind, and it requires awareness, repetition, and the willingness to sweat for your own potential, even when no one notices the bloom. As your discipline deepens, the voices that once mocked your ambition begin to fade. They're replaced by a quiet confidence, a knowing. You begin to realize that mastery isn't about proving anything to the world. It's about proving something to yourself, that your mind belongs to you, that your energy answers to vision, not emotion, that your days are not dictated by chance, but by conscious choice. And this is the paradox of discipline. It feels like restriction in the beginning, but it becomes freedom in the end. When you no longer depend on motivation to act, you become unstoppable. When your habits are aligned with your purpose, time bends in your favor. When your inner voice becomes your ally instead of your enemy, the world around you begins to reflect that inner order. So, if you've ever wondered what separates the average from the extraordinary, it's not talent, it's not luck, it's the quiet decision, made daily, to do what must be done, no matter what. That's what builds character. That's what creates leaders. That's what transforms ordinary lives into legacies. Every act of discipline, no matter how small, is a declaration of war against your lesser self. It's a reminder that your future is not inherited, it's built, brick by brick, choice by choice. Hill warned us of the hypnotic rhythm, that dangerous autopilot where most people drift through life, reacting instead of creating, surviving instead of leading. Discipline is how you break that rhythm. It's how you interrupt the sleepwalk. It's how you reclaim authorship of your own story. Think of the greatest people in history, the visionaries, the leaders, the game changers. None of them became who they were by accident. They mastered their minds before they ever mastered their crafts. They understood that before you can command the world, you must first command your own impulses. Before you can lead others, you must lead yourself. Through the temptations, the distractions, and the comfort of mediocrity. Discipline is not glamorous, it's not loud, it's silent victories in the dark. It's saying no to the easy path when no one is watching. It's the art of keeping promises to yourself even when your feelings beg you to break them. And in a world addicted to shortcuts, that kind of self-loyalty is revolutionary. But here's the truth. It won't happen in a single day. Mastery is not a moment. It's a pattern. It's showing up when it's hard, again and again, until what once felt impossible becomes automatic. Until your default setting is excellence, until quitting is no longer an option because your identity has shifted. This is your invitation, not to try, but to transform. To stop waiting for the right time and become the kind of person who creates the right time. Speak to yourself not with doubt, but with direction. Not with hesitation, but with conviction. Your mind is your kingdom. Rule it. There will be days when your mind feels like an enemy, whispering lies of limitation, urging you to retreat, to delay, to settle. But that's the moment you must remember. Your mind is not your master. It is your servant. And you train it not by yelling louder, but by whispering truths consistently. Self-discipline begins in those whispers, the ones that say, "I am capable," when fear screams otherwise. The ones that say, "I choose growth," even when it hurts. Those whispers, repeated with intention, become commands, and those commands, honored with action, become your new reality. Hill taught us that success is not a matter of luck, but of law. The law of cause and effect, of desire and action, of belief and persistence. Every time you act with discipline, you align yourself with that law. You become a cause, not a consequence, a creator, not a captive. And that's where true freedom lives. Not in doing what you want when you want, but in doing what must be done, especially when you don't want to. There is a sacred power in mastering your emotions, your habits, your thoughts. Because once you can control yourself, nothing outside of you can truly control you. Not fear, not failure, not even time. You become a force, consistent, focused, untouchable. The world bends not to your wish, but to your will. But this path is not for everyone. It requires sacrifice. It demands that you give up who you've been to become who you're meant to be. And that transition is not painless, but it is priceless. Because the moment you choose discipline over distraction, clarity over chaos, legacy over laziness, that's the moment your life begins to align with your highest self. So ask yourself now, are you willing to be uncomfortable today so you can be unstoppable tomorrow? Will you be the one who chooses to master the mind, or the one who gets mastered by it? But there's one truth few are willing to accept. Mastering your mind requires surrendering the illusion of control. You cannot command what you refuse to confront. The undisciplined mind is like a wild horse, powerful but chaotic. It resists direction, bucking against every attempt to guide it. But once you stop trying to dominate it with brute force and instead learn to partner with it, with awareness, with repetition, with vision, then it begins to obey. Not because it's broken, but because it has finally been heard. Hill teaches us that every act of discipline is a seed planted in the subconscious. And, like any seed, it needs darkness before it reaches the light. That darkness is repetition without reward, action without applause, progress without proof. This is where most give up, because they mistake silence for failure. But the truth is, this is where the roots are growing, where the inner foundation is being laid. And only those who persist through this invisible phase ever see the visible results. Think of the greatest minds, the clearest leaders, the boldest creators. They were not lucky. They were loyal. Loyal to their routines, to their higher standards, to their invisible progress. They woke up when others slept. They repeated mantras when others repeated doubts. They acted when others hesitated. And that discipline, compounded over weeks and months and years, made them unstoppable. Not by force, but by alignment. You don't become disciplined in one decision. You become disciplined in 1,000 tiny moments when no one is watching. When your old self whispers temptations and you, with clarity, whisper back, "I am not that anymore." That is the shift. Not loud, but final. Not dramatic, but defining. It is not in the external changes. It is in the invisible vows you make with your own mind and keep. Now, the question is not whether you're capable. You already are. The question is, are you willing to remain loyal long enough for the results to appear? Are you brave enough to keep planting when nothing has bloomed yet? Because discipline is not a punishment. It is proof that you believe in the future version of yourself enough to act like them now. In the silence that follows every hard decision, there is a voice, faint at first, that begins to grow. It's the voice of the self you're becoming. The version of you that chose consistency over comfort, direction over doubt. And in that silence, as the noise of excuses fades, you hear the truth. Mastery was never about controlling everything. It was about commanding yourself when everything felt out of control. That voice, it is yours, and it has waited long enough. We often search for freedom outside of ourselves, chasing outcomes, approval, shortcuts, but the true victory, the one Napoleon Hill so tirelessly revealed, lies in conquering the battlefield within. Discipline is not a prison, it is a passage, and once you walk through it, you realize every limit you ever knew was a lie, a shadow on the wall, a thought unchallenged. And you were always more powerful than that. The mind you once feared becomes your fiercest ally. The habits that once sabotaged you become sacred rituals. You no longer react to life. You respond. You no longer drift. You decide. You no longer wonder who you are. You build it, brick by brick, breath by breath, day by day. That is the quiet revolution of self-discipline. It doesn't shout, it transforms. So pause now, breathe, and look at your reflection, not just in the mirror but in your actions. What would change if, for the next 7 days, you treated your inner world like it mattered more than the outer one? What would happen if, for once, you didn't negotiate with your greatness? You demanded it. If this message sparked something in you, not just inspiration but a decision, then don't let it die here. Keep it alive. Feed it. Share it. Comment below what you're claiming for yourself. Subscribe to be part of this journey, because the world needs more minds that are disciplined, more spirits that are awake. And maybe, just maybe, that starts with you, right now.